The Singapore Turf Club has always been a very popular destination amongst many a jockey wishing to hone their international skills and add some international success to their CV. Currently, there are 12 expatriate jockeys licensed here at the Singapore Turf Club behind me here at Kranji, many of them Australians. And today, we're going to catch up with one such Australian who arrived here in May and is certainly making a very popular name for himself here at the Singapore Turf Club. His name? Daniel Moore.
It's Bangkok Boy in front, keep winning, but up towards the line, Bangkok Boy. Zulu Warrior mastering St Elizabeth on the run towards the line, and it'll be a winner for Buckets. Zulu Warrior will go and win.
Well, Dan, great to catch up with you after what was not an overly busy trials morning. Beautiful day for it. And to start, let's just go back to the very beginning. How did it all begin for D. Moore, the jockey?
Well, initially I never really wanted to become a jockey. My father was a jockey. He got too heavy and saw the hard sort of lifestyle of a battling jockey, and he sort of never steered me towards racing at all. But I had to ride my push bike through the Warrnambool racecourse to get to school, and local legendary trainer Jocker Bailey down there grabbed me one morning. He said, "Oh, you're Brendan Moore's son, you know, would you like to ride a horse?" And it sort of just went from there. So kept it secret from Dad from a fair amount of time, but once he saw that I was completely committed, he was very pleased for me.
And you mentioned obviously Warrnambool being home, and your first ride, Ice Ranger. How much do you remember about him? Yeah,
well, it was a 2,000 metre race, I think, and it all went by in what felt like 30 seconds. It was all over very quickly. He wasn't overly blessed with a great deal of ability, and I distinctly remember Michelle Payne giving me a serve during the race, so I was probably wandering around in the run where I shouldn't have been. But no, it was a great experience, especially on the third day of the May Carnival there. I had a lot of school friends, a lot of family, so it was a real buzz, but yeah, it all went by pretty quickly.
And obviously he was the first rider. Certain Vlad Jurek actually just finished behind you, and obviously both he and you now plying your trade here in Singapore. How long did you have to wait for the first winner?
It took around 30 rides. So back in those days, I worked for a hard taskmaster in Ray Lawson, and he really made you work for your rides back then. It wasn't set up for you to ride a winner your first ride, and to be perfectly honest, your first 150, 200 rides, you're not really knowing what you're doing. So yeah, it took me 30 rides and finally knocked one over, and then it took a long time from after that. So I didn't sort of really get rolling until a couple of years into my apprenticeship.
You mentioned a few names there, obviously, that you started with and trainers and such. And what about the Australian successes? I mean, you've got a great alliance with the Freedman family, but what of the success there back in your homeland, for which there was plenty?
Yeah, look, I've obviously this season back home, I was having a career best season to date. Won the Easter Cup, Bendigo Mile, and the Angus Armanasco Stakes on a really progressive filly, and I was getting great support, and obviously riding a lot of city winners and going really well. But at the same time, I was extremely excited and rapt when I heard that I had the licence to ride in Singapore.
Yeah, superb to obviously have you here. It's somewhere that I know has been on the sort of the list and the sort of the target for many a jockey. Just staying in Australia, obviously, as you say, two of your better years have been the recent two. But there's one horse I know is very dear to your heart, a horse called Authoritarian. Tell us a little bit more about him.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, look, he's a very nondescript horse. He wasn't much to look at. He wasn't overly endowed with ability, but he'd have to be the toughest horse I've ever sat in my life. He was Lee and Anthony sort of hatched a plan with him after he won a lowly maiden at Geelong on the all-weather. I think that was over 1,800 or 2,000, and Lee and Anthony worked their genius with him to go on and win the St Ledger in the same preparation. So he took massive leaps, and just such a game horse. He'd lead, he'd go hard, and I had just great confidence in the horse that you could just take off on him, make a sustained run, and he'd be strong to the line. He was just a tough horse, and we've actually got him in our care now.
Yeah, it was superb to look back on his record, but I think as well, you told me earlier on in the week that your two brothers had such a big influence on this horse, and I think you'll probably you'll say it yourself, but without them, he probably never have got the success that he did.
Yeah, absolutely. James, my younger brother, he used to strap the horse, and he was with the horse 24/7. He did have his issues. He had a lot of joint problems and things like that. That's why his preferred surface was a softer track. So James used to really have him wrapped in cotton wool a lot of the time, and my other brother Billy used to ride him track work. So it was a real family affair, and we got a great thrill out of him. He never won huge races. He won a Maui Cup and a St Ledger and a couple of city races, but it was more so the fact that we had such a great connection with the horse, and he's a lovely animal.
And the kid's now in training with Authoritarian?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm trying my best to keep my two away from from taking up the jockey sort of role, but my son, he'll be too big. He's nearly as big as me now, and he's 8, and he's a gun at football and golf, so I'm quite happy there. But I think I'm going to have more trouble with my daughter Penelope. She's 3 and she's horse mad, so we'll just have to see how that pans out.
It sounds like we've got a couple more sporting Moors in the family. We'll stay in Australia. Obviously, before you came here to Singapore, you made the headlines. There was a certain Caulfield quaddie, something which hadn't been achieved since Craig Williams was able to achieve the feat back on Anzac Day in 2013. That must have been a big day for you as well. I mean, it paid over 61,000, so anyone that had a ticket with your 4 rides on them, they would have been delighted.
Yeah, look, it was a great day. You know, it was a bit of a blur, really. Well, not a blur, but it sort of just kept rolling on. And you know, I thought I had solid rides for the day, and I really liked the chance of my horse in the last race. So I thought that was my best ride, working from home. But you know, it sort of just happened. The track buy sort of planned out. I walked the track thoroughly before the first, and just kept an eye on the track and how it was playing throughout the day. And there was certain lanes at Caulfield that day that were playing better than others. But you know, I had horses in their right races with the right weights, and you know, after I rode the third, I remember having the interview after the race, and I said, "Oh, we'll have a crack at the quaddie," and it came off. And you know, it wasn't until I sat down, I just went for a quiet dinner with my family that night, and sort of sitting there and getting some messages of thanks that sort of the gravity of the situation sort of sunk in. And you know, 4 winners is great, but it's a little bit more rare to ride the quadrella legs. So it was a great day.
Certainly was, I'm sure, and I'm not sure what you make of this quote, but a certain Danny O'Brien said you're the most underrated rider in Australia.
Well, you don't know where underrated sits in the broad scheme of things, but it's great to have that kind of acknowledgement from a trainer such as Danny O'Brien, and he's been a massive support to me. You know, we're close friends. Danny, Nina, and Lauren and myself are quite good friends, and you know, he's got a great group of owners, and Danny's very loyal. You know, he's when I put the work in, he's happy to put me on, so it works out well.
Well, listen, it sounds as if all was going very swimmingly in Australia, but let's fast forward the clock. You're now here in Singapore. You've been here since May. When did it resonate with Daniel Moore that you sort of something clicked in your mind and said, right, Singapore's where I want to go?
Well, I guess the daily grind of racing in Victoria was really getting to me. I enjoy set routine and set work, but you know, a typical day there, we're up at 3:30, track work 4. You may go to say Geelong for jump outs or trials. Come home, get ready for the races, and drive anywhere upwards from 2.5 to 3 hours one way to the races. And you're doing that 7 days a week, and it's a real grind. You can't really pick and choose your rides. You've got to go to meetings, and you might be going to those lowly meetings for 2 or 3 rides, but for your trainer or an owner that supports you. So you really have to do it. And you know, I'd live with my family, but I'd sometimes go a week without seeing them. You know, getting up early, obviously, before they're up, and arriving after they're in bed. So it made it quite tough. The lifestyle was the main pointer to come to Singapore, where I can spend more time with family, but also it was on my bucket list to come here.
Certainly a place to be. Obviously, many a rider has made their way across to the little red dot. Of the connections, obviously Lee Friedman, as we've already touched upon, a big influence for you. But you've made some very good friends here, the likes of James Peters, Stephen Gray, Bruce Marsh. You've ridden winners for all of these gentlemen, Michael Clements, Sedel Mock included. China Horse Club, that's obviously been a big part of your life as well. You've had a nice connection with them. Yeah,
the team behind China Horse Club are fantastic. You know, you've got Eden Harrington, Michael Wallace, the blood selector, Mr. Teo, who chairs the whole operation, and the trainers. You know, they're just they're really good people. It's a good crew of people. They invest heavily in racing, both here and abroad. They've had good success, and they deserve the most of it. But you know, they're very loyal. Obviously, I wasn't riding their top liners in Australia and whatnot, but there's always a spot for me there, and I'm very thankful to the China Horse Club for including me in their family, which is great. Yeah, and 11 winners from I think some 147 rides so far this year. So things are ticking over quite nicely. I guess it probably comes across as a bit of a silly question in a sense, but you know, what do you wish to achieve here in Singapore? Obviously, there are plenty of nice feature races, and prize money, another one, being astronomically good. Yeah, absolutely. The prize money here is fantastic. You know, the club's got a good structure of feature races, which you know, are getting better and better as the years go on. So obviously I'd like to win a big one. That's on the top of the list, but probably just maintaining a good level of consistency. You know, winning on horses when they've got a good chance and things like that, and you know, giving horses every opportunity to run the best as they can, because you know, consistency is key. You look at a rider like Vlad Jurek, he's consistently riding winners. Michael Rodd, same deal, consistently riding winners. And I think you know, it's more beneficial to everybody in racing when you're consistent and you're riding well. You know, you want your bad rides to be as minimal as possible, and you want to keep that good, consistent level of performance.
Certainly do, and obviously of the big race success, there's been obviously a nice handful of Group 2s, Group 3s, and you're also telling me a Group 1 in Mauritius as well. And just touching upon international experience, as it were. Some may not realise that you have quite a bit.
Yeah, I've been really lucky. I spent 3 or 4 months in Mauritius riding for Shirish Narang over there, and it was a good experience, amazing experience. Racing over there is similar to an EPL football league. They support stables as though they're sort of football clubs, and was lucky enough to ride a Group 1 winner over there for probably the oldest stable there, the Gajadar stable. So that was great. But yeah, I've had a little bit of experience overseas. Obviously, China, Korea, New Zealand, Singapore, obviously, Australia, all around Australia. So I've had a bit of wealth of knowledge, which is great. You never stop learning, and great experiences overseas, and hopefully that bodes well for my time here.
Absolutely, I'm sure, and many will certainly realise that indeed. How does Daniel Moore switch off from racing? What obviously here in Singapore, there's always seemingly plenty to do. For all, it's not the biggest island in the world. What do you do to switch off?
Unfortunately, there's no camping and fishing here, so that's how I used to wind down. I used to head up to the river and go off the grid, so to speak, for 3 or 4 days with my son, and we'd rough it up there, and that was good fun. So I've struggled to find sort of something for the downtime here, but I've never had so much spare free time, so I spent a lot of time watching movies and obviously seeing the sights of Singapore, but gives you a lot of time to go through form and identify horses that you like to ride, so that frees up a lot of time to do that, but I'm sure we'll find something to keep ourselves amused.
I'm sure indeed. And just finally, Dan, obviously it would be remiss of us not to pose the question. Many may have heard it in a call, especially from myself, I think, predominantly, but the nickname Buckets, where does that come from?
Well, like I previously mentioned, I worked for a hard taskmaster in Ray Lawson. He's the father of Dean, who trained Testarossa, and he was a great old boss. I wouldn't have said that at the time. I would have said, he was a hard man and worked me to the core, but he had various punishments for sort of arriving late to work. He was always immaculately dressed at 3:30 in the morning. He could go to the races looking like he did, and he expected you to be the same. And being an apprentice and a little bit lazy and tired, I'd wake up late occasionally and get to work. And I think one of them was filling out an exercise book full of lines, "I will not be late to work," and then another punishment was digging out boxes and things. But the final punishment before Ray gave it away training was actually sitting on a bucket with my feet on another bucket, watching all the horses go past and jotting down who they were trained by and ridden by. So I did that for a few weeks because I found that was more beneficial than riding track work. I actually got out of riding work, so that's unfortunately how the name stuck.
Well, it sounds like it has stuck, and it sounds like it's here to stay. Dan, listen, very many thanks for your joining us here this morning. Obviously, we're very grateful of your time, and all the very best for your time in Singapore.
Thanks, mate. Thanks for having me.
And it will be a winner for Buckets.